Barrie, thank you so much for seeing us. I know you've got a 2-year waiting list, so why are you doing all of this amazing work at the moment and helping so many people?
I'll run through my background very quickly.
Wonderful.
First.
Thank you.
I started studying microwaves in 1959 to go into what was then military school.
Yeah.
And whilst I was in the Royal Navy, I trained also to be a diver. And of course, with all divers in all navies, a part of your work is underwater bomb disposal. And underwater bomb disposal also uses microwaves as a booby trap device. Or what got me really interested was I was taking a bomb to pieces underwater and it was too complicated. I wanted to bring it up, but my partner said if you bring it up, they'll turn the microwaves onto your brain with a beam, and that will make you make a mistake. That got my interest, because I wondered why microwaves would affect your brain from that distance. But I went through, I had top security clearance. When I left the Royal Navy, I became a teacher for the government, the Home Office. I qualified as a teacher, and I taught in the maximum security wing in Wormwood Scrubs Prison. People don't realise that big prisons have a fully running college, evening classes, day classes, all sorts of classes. So I taught there, and a part of my brief, it was, I'll say invented, but thought up. It was Sir William Melvin. He worked out that only about 10% of anything comes out in court. The rest of the 90% of information, useful information, comes out in conversation over the years. So I would have coffee with spies, the great train robbers, terrorists, anybody, usually to get a little piece of information that will prevent somebody doing harm to somebody else. So I'll just carry on with that.
Yeah, a great way to get to know the minds of people.
Oh yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. And I did this for 11 years.
Yeah.
And then I went to teach in a college. I teach advanced physics, some biology, mathematics. My first degree, I specialised in nuclear and atomic physics and philosophy. My second degree, which came with honours, I studied environmental influences on the brain, including microwaves. I have a full teaching diploma in all sports and well-being from the Home Office. When I learned that microwaves were being used as walkie-talkies, as mobile telephones for people and children, I wrote to the company and the government and said, you can't do this because microwaves are inherently dangerous to anything that contains water.
Yes.
It's why microwave ovens work. And the moment microwaves go into your brain or your body, you are changing what is called the entropy of the body or the brain, and that can never be repaired. Similarly, if you damage the mitochondrial DNA,
Yeah.
if you damage the mitochondrial DNA of the woman, that is passed down through the female line forever, mother to daughter forever. And if you damage the mitochondrial DNA, it is irreparable. So if you cause a genetic harm with microwaves going into the ovary, then that particular genetic damage is going to go down through every single generation, spina bifida, Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, all of those, that will go down the female line forever.
Wow.
And since then, I have been campaigning on my own, free of charge, so anybody in the world can afford me, free of charge, and I lecture, I write research papers on this, I lecture, and I write research articles for governments, royal families. I've been, I think, the confidant of 8 royals, several governments that are trying to protect their countries, as well as those that are not caring about their countries. That gives you a rough idea of who I am, what we're doing.
You're an amazing man. Thank you for your work. And yeah, so what about, do you feel there's an addiction to mobile phones at the moment, to cell phones? You see everybody walking around with these cell phones, especially the young people. What harm do you think that's doing?
Sure. You've hit the nail right on the head here. A brilliant question. I have known this for many, many years. Microwaves, they will entrain the brain. And when you entrain something, you have what follows is called long-term potentiation. Now, to understand this, if you are bouncing on a trampoline, you will bounce at your particular resonant frequency, your rhythm, that is comfortable to you. Everything has its own rhythm or vibrational frequency. If you're bouncing on a trampoline and a 40-stone man jumps on and starts bouncing, you are going to bounce at his frequency, not yours. You don't have the energy to change it. That is called entrainment. When the man jumps off the trampoline, you will still go at his frequency until you get yours back. That is called potentiation, and it can last up to 6 weeks. And an experiment was done on children. They found that a child who uses a cell phone for 2 minutes, their brain would not return to normal for 2 hours. It's not a linear scale. It doesn't mean that 4 minutes is 4 hours and so on. But 2 minutes will harm a child's brain for 2 hours, which means if a child is using a cell phone on the way into school, playtime, lunchtime, afternoon playtime, their brain is never ever going to be normal in class. And only this year I was asked by a consultant psychiatrist who said, "You won't believe the amount of parents that are bringing their children to me, but what's surprising me is not the common theme, which is as soon as they start talking on their cell phones, but the different type of behaviour traits." And he said, "You're an expert in this from the Cold War, where I made a list of I think it was 20 or 30 different frequencies used by spies that could induce around 40 to 50 different biological or neurological functions. And for instance, there is one pulse frequency. It is the pulse frequency that does the damage in the microwave. It's built into the microwave. One pulse frequency can make you feel that you're going to have diarrhea that instant. And I get questions from people in the Olympics, trainers, saying, could you beam one of these things onto an athlete and make them lose their concentration? And I said, of course you can. With something no bigger than a small handheld camera, if you send a beam to the head of somebody who's winning, to make them lose their concentration or breath for a matter of a second is the difference between first and third place and a gold medal. And you can do it in any sport at any particular time, even horses on horse racing. So there is a lot. I listed about 40, 50 different traits that could be induced. Today's list by a scientist called Pennefiel, Penafiel, et al. With a team, in 1997, he made a list of 600 pulses that can cause damage or change behaviour. The 600, it's mathematically at 600 factorial, which means you can have number 1 and number 20 and number 320. You can have any amount of the 600. And this surprisingly isn't new. This was discovered and papers were written on this in 64 BC, which is when we knew about this. A Greek living in Egypt called Ptolemy, spelled with a P, Ptolomy. It was a party game. He built a wheel, a solid wheel, like a wooden wheel, and he drilled holes around the circumference. And he had this wheel supported on some sort of axle. And he would heat up different metallic objects so they would vibrate at different light frequencies.
Yeah.
And he would have the sun, different materials burning, glowing, reflecting light through these holes. And he found that if you spun this wheel at different rates, you could cause epileptic fits, which then was taken as a joke at a party game. You could cause epileptic fits. You could make somebody go soporific, so they would go to sleep. You could drive them absolutely bonkers. And he wrote a paper on this in 64 BC, and the paper is still referenced today. And the frequency they're using from this, they're using it on sun lamps, and this frequency, pulse frequency, is coming out to make you feel relaxed, which is why you feel that you have the sun on your skin, but you also have this pulse frequency making your body feel ultra relaxed, which is addictive. And funny enough, I can give this to you. I wrote a paper, it's called Addiction and Harm from Cell Phones.
Yeah.
I'll put it there. And it's more of an essay than a research paper, although it has zoomed around the world with psychiatrists. And I've listed the main parts of a brain there, where depending on the angle you hold your phone, some people slap them against there, some that way. Depending on the angle, there are, I think I've listed about 18 different parts of the brain that can be affected. And I've made a list here of all of the parts of the brain that can be affected, which I sent to the psychiatrist, who was extremely grateful, because I've listed which part of the brain you are microwaving and what that part of the brain is responsible for. Therefore, that is the change that will appear in the person. And since then, it has been turned into, by the military, into a weapon for questioning captured people, and they would put them into a cell. They would send a particular frequency to the brain, and excuse me, once you have learnt the frequencies and how they affect the brain, this was finely tuned by a scientist called Jose Delgado, Spanish. The Jose is spelled with a J. He got this right the way down to fine tuning, and he put a woman in a room with a man, and he turned on the frequency that would make the woman feel extremely romantic and sexy. And she didn't know this man, but she started stripping off and wanted to kiss him and do all sorts, until he turned it off. He went into a bull ring with a bull that was charging. It shows how confident he was on his work. He aimed the beam at the bull, and the bull just stopped. And then he turned it off, and the bull started charging. He turned it on, the bull stopped. And he then said that we can produce any mood or any addiction, any mood, any change of character. We can make people do anything we want from this. And he was at an American university. They don't like being named because they're ashamed of what he did. He was at a famous American university. They asked him to leave because they didn't like where this was going. He left, went back to his university in Spain, I believe, and carried on the work, which has since been taken up by the military and is used for brainwashing and causing harm. But you can have this, and there's all of the Jonathan can have this if he wants to go with his you can photocopy this, it's photocopy free. Jonathan can have this if he submits this for an article.
Yeah, thank you, Barrie.
Okay.
Yeah, amazing, yeah. What about targeted individuals? You've written a paper on that, I believe, targeted individuals.
Absolutely.
Individuals. And who would they want to target, and why?
That is, it is a brilliant, brilliant question, that. And there are a surprising number of people being targeted. Now, it first came out many years ago as a deliberate act of targeting brains. It first came out in the United States by a big chain store, and they worked out that if you beamed this beam onto a person that was a known shoplifter, you could send pulses in this beam that would go into the ear, and as now sound waves, which are pulses, they go into the ear, they vibrate the cochlea, which is really got jelly inside it. The jelly vibrates, little tiny hairs vibrate in the jelly, that is transformed into electricity, goes into the auditory nerve and the auditory part of the brain, which then translates it into sounds that make sense to us. There's no reason why you can't have these pulses with microwaves, and the microwaves are sent. The thief who is picking something up and looking around hears in his ear, put that down or you'll be arrested straight away, we're watching you, and leave the store. And they did, and they found that their shoplifting dropped to almost zero. And then it didn't take one of the managers with more than 2 brain cells linked together to think, hang on, we can also use this to sell.
Wow.
And if you've got a man who is romantically involved with a beautiful young lady and he wants to impress her, and she is picking up a lovely piece of jewellery, and he hears this voice, now that is what she really, really wants. Buy that and she's yours, you know.
Yeah.
Am I imagining it? Is my brain talking to me?
Yeah.
And it can only be your brain.
Yeah.
Don't put it down, you'll be making a mistake. This is your brain talking to you. Get it? And, you know, and they found that I think in a single month, it was a colossal amount of profit they make. It was something like $60,000 a month profit or something. And that is a big thing in the store. But they were taken to court.
Yeah.
And I have the details for that court case. They were taken to court for brainwashing, being brainwashed.
Yeah.
And they lost. The people taking the industry or the shop to court lost. The court won. Because the people couldn't prove that the shop was causing them any harm. They have free will. They can choose not to buy it, but the microwaves are making them buy it, but it's not causing them harm. And it was allowed. The store won the court case. And since then, fast food stores are using it now. When you're hungry, you're looking at all the beef burgers and cheeseburgers and things, and it'll stop you there. It says, that's the one you want, Jonathan. That one there, double burger, double cheese, egg, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And it works. And other shops have picked this up. And it cannot be proven to do harm. And there is no point going to court. And this is being used at the moment.
Wow.
And the other part of your question, why are people targeted? And it is, I would think, any sensible scientific college student, even year 11 in school student, would be able to transform a microwave into a microwave weapon. It's incredibly easy to do. You've got a machine making microwaves. All you've got to do is work out a way for the microwaves to come out through the window. And that's it. And sadly, I find this being used a lot by landlords against tenants who have a sitting tenancy of a fixed rent. And I was talking to a lady only yesterday with a flat, a beautiful flat in Trafalgar Square, overlooking the square. She's had this flat a long time. It is a fixed tenancy. She pays very little rent, and if the landlords can get her out, they can sell that property for several million, a lovely flat on Trafalgar Square, or rent it for probably £1,000 a day, the same as the hotels in that area. And with her talking, we have worked out that all you have to do is put your microwave oven up against the wall facing the next door flat and turn it on, and you will induce microwave sickness. And microwave sickness is extremely crippling. It's the same symptoms as in medicine, lead arsenide poisoning. Lead will poison the brain and will drive you absolutely mad, the same as mercury will do. Arsenic is still used today, but was used a lot in Victorian times by husbands who were fed up with their wives, or the other way round. They would put it in their porridge or something, and they would die an extremely painful death within a few weeks. Now the tests are there that will show microwave sickness, but you've basically got to be dead first. And it's being used a lot by people who want people out of the house. Also, people who are complaining about you as a neighbour. You want to have your video games on at 3 o'clock in the morning with maximum sound for the machine guns and everything. Next door are a couple who want to sleep, and you're beaming them with microwaves to cause microwave sickness, which is a very debilitating illness and causes immense pain in the body. And so targeted people, it is used by usually governments, but not the government you're being targeted in. For instance, if you're in one country and you want to find out an easy way to target the people of another country to make them all sick, it's a lot cheaper to put up transmitters which are unknown to this country, it's easier to put up transmitters which are hidden and make a whole area sick than it is send in a load of tanks and soldiers and bullets. And within 20, 30 years of doing this, you can virtually take over a country.
Wow. So it's almost like silent weapons for some.
It is a silent weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is used for all sorts of work on terrorists. We used it as a silent weapon against the Catholics in Northern Ireland to make a whole street sick and stop the terrorists being normal. The United States used microwave weapons against the women at Greenham Common who were protesting against nuclear weapons on English soil. The Russians used microwave weapons against the Americans in their embassy in Moscow, which still has the maximum per capita death of breast cancers and cancers from being continuously microwaved at a low level. So it's as there are as many uses as there are people thinking up, I can use this. And it is a lot of people. And the more you look into microwaves, the more uses you can give. The latest one, and I've said this in court, is microwaves will reduce the immune system of anything which it comes in contact with, anything which is living. So if I wanted to destroy an entire forest, which was the life and blood of a particular country like Canada or Holland, the Netherlands, all I have to do is beam microwaves at the trees. The trees will suffer some sort of blight, they will develop sickness, and they will slowly die. When I say slowly, it's slowly for us, but not a tree. Within 100 years, they will all be infected. You can make plants affected. You can make wheat lose its immune system. So if I wanted America to become bankrupt, I would microwave, and this can be done by satellite, and it can be done by a ground base station as well. You can bounce the satellite, so bounce is the wrong word scientifically. You can reflect by simple geometry microwaves off the ionosphere, which is ionic, and you can cause an entire wheat field, which can be a half of a country like America. You can cause that to have blight. You ruin their economy because they sell it to the entire world, and in the process you grow wheat, and now the wheat which is being sold or should be sold by America is inedible because it's infectious. All of it has to be resown, whereas you've now got the only supply in the world, and you up your price tenfold and you make several billion pounds in the process. And this is where we are now. People are finding uses for microwaves that can make them millions, if not billions. And it's used by one person against another next door, one family against another family. There is usually a reason, but it can be used for anything. And the targeted people, they are probably targeted by foreign agents to work out a frequency that will hurt most that particular race of people, because each race will have a slightly different frequency that affects them.
Wow. Do you think, I know it sounds far-fetched, it could be an anti-human agenda, anti-humans, anti-nature, anti-animals? Is that a possibility?
It's not far-fetched. If somebody said to me, and I have said this on air, on television, I've said this, and it is known, and I'll say it again here. For instance, when 5G came out, any scientist like myself knew straight away how dangerous it would be. It is incredibly dangerous. And we've known that since the Cold War, where the Russians microwaved animals and people and plants, trees, for just 60 hours over 60 days. And I think that they just used it, I think it was however many minutes a day for 60 hours. And they found that all of the grown-up people, the large farm animals, the trees, everything had life-changing injuries. And that was in the 70s, way back. So, and we knew that about 5G then. So, but 5G is being brought out now. It was brought out, as far as I know, or started in China, and the biggest density of people that are having 5G beamed at them are Muslims. There is an enclave of Muslims in Wuhan, and they are suffering quite a lot of microwave sickness by living in a goldfish bowl of microwaves, particularly 5G, with 4, 3, 2G and Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6, all of that lot, and pulses. So if you said to me, would that be a way of limiting the amount of Muslims in your country, I would say yes, of course, because it's going to cause microwave sickness, and within 18 months you will have mass breast cancers, you will have mass other cancers, and there will be so much sickness that the doctors won't be able to cope in their surgeries. There are, in an adult, there are 10,500 biological structures which can be harmed and made to change by microwaves. And the two places in the world where 5G is causing the most harm, by sheer coincidence, is one in China, where you have the biggest density of Muslims, and a hospital in the United States that went all 5G. And I'm trying to think, a paper was written on it by, a neurologist. I gave a lecture for him, excuse me, I gave a lecture for him in Germany. Dietrich Klinghardt, that's Klinghardt, Dietrich Klinghardt. He has written an article. He is a neurologist and a medical doctor in his own right. He wrote an article on why 5G will cause particular harm and the possibility that the COVID injections, the ionic structure of the COVID injections can be changed by microwaves and cause other things in the body to change that wasn't expected. And the industry have been given immunity should this happen, but the microwaves can cause quite a change in the serum, and what they could have done first, for as well as just keeping people isolated at home, what they could have done, carried out, was testing the microwaves on this particular serum at the dose they're going to get to see how it would change the serum and to see whether the serum, in fact, would be effective. So that hasn't been done, and they have been given immunity, but papers by very eminent people have been written on this, and they could be right.
Yeah.
They could be right.
Yeah. How dangerous do you think smart meters are in homes? They're giving out a pulse frequency too.
Yep. Smart meters are inherently dangerous. They will say to you, but they only transmit to the main station for something like so many seconds a day. What they're not telling you is, yes, they are sending all of these pulses for several seconds a day, which can cause harm, but you will have in a 5-meter block of flats, 5-mile block of flats, or 50-mile area of land, you will find several smart meters, if they can, one in every house.
Yeah.
Each smart meter will be linked to up to 12 or 15 things in the house. So the smart meter will tell you what has been turned on, what has been turned off, how much electricity or gas you have used, how much it has cost. That is for your benefit, and you can keep an idea of how much you're spending. What they're not telling you is each smart meter has to synchronize itself with all the other smart meters, and they do that several times an hour several hours a day, and you are being bombarded with 15 lots for each house, 15 lots of microwave radiation bouncing around all these houses, including yours, and going to all of the smart meters, that is sending them all to each other and then on to the main base station. And what they're not telling you either is the military, when I say military, the secret services, spies, the government. When I say government, I mean government departments, the health service, the social services, the people who pay unemployment benefits, the people who pay some sort of income benefit, the people who run your taxes, they also have access to all of this information.
So they're spying on
So, let's say you have somebody living in your house who's homeless, but you're paying your rates for a single person. They will know straight away that there are two people there. And they can write to you and say, you owe us this back money. We don't know when that person moved in, but we're going to charge you 6 months or 6 years back tax because you have somebody in your house. They will know when you get up and leave your television, because your television watches you. And when you leave the room, for your benefit, the television will turn itself off to save electricity. But the television will also know, and they will know, when you are leaving the room. They will know where you're going. They will know how long you spend in the bathroom, how long you spend in bed, how long you spend in the toilet, how long your kitchen appliances. They will work out a pattern that you follow every single day, and this can be sold to advertisers. It can be sold to the people who you pay your social services to, and they will check up on you, and they have access to everything you are doing in your house because of the smart meter. And if you have it connected to this Alexis or these other speak machines, everything you say can be recorded, can be sent to one of the several factories they have around the world, and they will listen to the conversations. They will pick out the main words. They will store these, and they will sell this to the advertising business or whoever wants to buy it.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah. I'm just wondering, can that be used against you?
Of course it can, yes. If, for instance, and I'll give you 2 examples. A reporter for one of our national newspapers, she went out for a cup of coffee with her friend in a coffee shop. They just put their cell phones on the table, which were turned off.
Yeah.
She was talking to her friend about she's going for treatment on her eye, some sort of laser treatment, and by the time she got back to her job in the office, her cell phone was full of advertisements by companies wanting to sell surgery, optical lenses, glasses, and her cell phone was off. So they listen to you, they pick up the key words, and they sell that information to whoever wants it. And it could be used against you. It could be used by organised crime.
Or blackmail?
Well, organised crime, yeah, for blackmail. Organised crime can, they'll work out your daily pattern. They will know when you're out the house. They will know what sort of security you've got. And they know that they have at least 4 hours in your house every day, or they will hear you go out for a day's trip to the beach, and they can come into your house at leisure, burgle you, and leave. They can blackmail, you said. If you are talking about on the telephone, if you are talking to your doctor about a sexually transmitted disease that you have, or something that is immensely embarrassing, that can be picked up and somebody could come and sit by you in a cafe and say, have a look at this information I've got. How would you like this to be put over the internet that you had sexual relations outside your marriage? You have a sexually transmitted disease that you have now got to be treated for. But then again, if you want to give me £50, I won't put this up and I will destroy it for you. And that can go on, that £50, for quite a lot of things. It can be used for blackmail. It can be used for anything.
Wow. Well, what would you say is your mission now in life, Barrie? You were talking about women and women in pregnancy and babies.
Well, I wrote a paper, a thought came into me. Some may believe it is a divine thought. I don't have any argument with that at all. All I know is I had several thoughts, all on the same theme. And that is that 5G is a particular wavelength. And when a lady becomes pregnant, when the sperm meets the female egg and it starts rolling down the tube, it becomes what's known as a zygote. And for the first several weeks, up to 3 weeks, for the first several weeks, the microwaves are the same size as the zygote, which are millimetre waves long. The zygote is millimetres long. And this is a brilliant question. When the zygote is a millimetre, and it is the same size now as one of the 5G beams, the zygote, when you have something which is wet or metallic, in other words, they have free floating electrons. When you have free floating electrons and a wave comes across you, you become an aerial because you are wet. And you become an aerial, and the electrons in you will start to move, which is how aerials work. They will start to move, and you then have an electric current which is produced inside the zygote. Now, the electric current in the zygote can affect, in the zygote, you have rapidly growing molecular structures. And I'll give you one instance. You have these small subatomic particles being told where to go by the other subatomic particles within the zygote. Now, the subatomic particles, they use minuscule electric currents to tell pieces of the body where to go. It is the most complex, miraculous thing known in the universe. And to give you an idea, if I gave you a telephone book now with every single person's telephone number in the world and said, you've got to dial this number, every single person's telephone number in the world, in 1 second, that is the complexity going on inside the zygote every second.
Wow.
There is nothing that compares in the universe. And as an instance, and I have worked out several of these, one of these subatomic particles tells a part of the zygote where to go in the body, which is basically the zygote is turning into a little tube at that particular stage, and it will say where it is going in this tube. Now, if there is a slight mistake and this subatomic particle goes to the wrong place or doesn't develop properly, you can develop cancer. And this has already been proven, and I've referenced it in my paper. This has already been proven, and it has been published in one of the Open University, which is a brilliant university, one of their documentaries. So what I'm saying is, on the 15th day of pregnancy, the 15th day, at this stage, the mother usually doesn't even know she's pregnant. Doesn't even know. It isn't usually until the 6th to 8th week when she goes to the doctor and the doctor says, congratulations, you're pregnant. But over that 6 weeks is the most dangerous time for the growing baby, because once the zygote becomes 2, 4, 6, 8 cells and it gets bigger, other microwaves start making it become an aerial, and some of the organs make it become an aerial. And it is published by the World Health Organization, who have been paid by the one of the American bodies, which also has control over the industry. The World Health Organization published, their top scientist, that at best, only 47% of pregnant women on their first pregnancy, 47% will give birth to a healthy baby. 47%. Over 50% will have either a stillbirth, a miscarriage, or a genetic illness. Over 50%. Now, if you look at the mathematics of this, and I'll come back to 50%, it's the same as a nuclear decay curve. After one generation, from one full generation, after one generation, you have lost a half of your born babies. They've either died or miscarried or whatever, stillbirth, genetic illness. So after one generation, 20 years, you've lost a half of all of those mothers. The next 20 years, the next generation, you're now down from a half to a quarter. You've lost another half. The third generation, only 1 in 8 babies is going to be born healthy. 1 in 8. So in 50 to 60 years from now, people who are not taking precautions will, only 1 in 8 of their children will be born healthy. 1 in 8. That means you, as a country, you have two options. You have mass immigration to raise your infrastructure for people to work the factories, run the hospitals. You've got to get people in. Or you cope as best as you can, but you will have lots of people coming in because you don't have any methods, any way of stopping them. You'll have mass immigration anyway. And when people come in, they will apply for rights to vote, and when they have voting rights, they have decisions on voting and who sits on. And basically, as one king said to me, his exact words, he said, "Barrie, in 50 years, I will have lost the viability of my country." And he was absolutely correct. And I wrote a paper on this. I don't know if you have a copy. It is called From Zygote to Fetus, and I wrote it basically in 2 languages. I wrote it for scientists and put in the paragraphs for people who are not scientists, and I have laid all of this out. It has been taken immensely serious around the world. To my knowledge, it has been published in 84 languages now by 84 countries, mostly by religions or religions that have religious groups who want to protect their congregations around the world. It is storming around the world at the moment. I don't know if you have a copy.
Not yet. No.
I'll give you one before you go.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll sign it as authentic for you before you go.
Yeah.
But it's. Do you have a website?
Yes, I do.
Maybe if I give you a copy,
We'll put on the website.
maybe you could put it on your website,
Yeah.
and you can tell the people what the website is, and you can put it on your website. It has been it's been peer reviewed. I'll just take a short break in a second. I didn't write it myself. I believe that I was helped spiritually to write it. Some of the thoughts I had are outside of my range of thoughts, which is fine. I asked the best midwife trainer in the country to help. I asked the best scientist, professor, who understands microwaves and water in the country, who has just published a paper. He helped me write it. My physics and mathematics professor helped me write it. I've listed all of those people. So it was a conglomeration of best minds. So although my name is on the front, and I co-wrote it with Andrew Tressida, who is a GP and scientist in his own right, and he co-wrote the paper with me to add, better than I could write, the medical bits. He's been 30 years a GP, and he knows his way around microwaves, and he co-wrote it. And in fact, when I think of my contribution of who wrote the paper, my contribution was the idea, and virtually everybody else put in their contribution. I produced the idea. So I don't take any credit for the paper at all.
But you believe there's an unseen force, the same as I do. You believe there's something else, a force helping us.
There is an unseen force. Many people have said to me when they've read my papers, they said, "Did you know there is an unseen force guiding you?" And one time I was writing a mathematics paper, which was, at the time I wrote it, was theory, which actually proves all of this, Jonathan. I wrote a mathematics paper, which was at then theory, but the professor that contributed to this part of the paper actually contributed the proof I needed, which is a reaction between microwaves and water gathering up the energy to have the microwaves change it. So he wrote that bit, that there is a continuum of microwaves that will build up to the level of energy required to change the structure of the water and what it does. I'll give you a copy, and you can use it with this. It is the mathematical proof of this, and I'll get you the paper as well. But yes, have I answered that question? Yes. Well, I was going to finish off with one thing. I wrote something, and I believe I was guided, and it was to do with radiation and mathematics, and I read it, and then I was happy and I went to bed, and then I came down in the morning and I reread it, and I thought, no, this is absolute rubbish, and I rubbed it out and rewrote what came into my thoughts in the first time. And I thought, I could just imagine the spirit saying, "I told you so, if you'd have only listened to me, like a wife, if you'd only listened to what I was telling you to do, you wouldn't have to do all this again, would you?" Now pay attention. I could just imagine that. But
you wrote a paper on High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HOP.
HOP, yep.
Yeah. How is that affecting us? They can change the weather, can't they?
Oh, easy.
Manipulate.
HARP, it's a whole big group of transmitters. I don't know how many there are now because the number changes, but there are a lot. And HARP isn't the only one now. There are 16 of those devices around the world. Now, the one you're talking about, the actual HARP, that is in Alaska.
Oh yeah.
And using simple geometry, you can reflect it off the ionosphere, which is basically hydrogen and helium, down on, and you can microwave a house, a country, a field, cattle. You can also send, I'll pour this in here while I'm going. You can also send waves through the planet.
So you can cause earthquakes and
You can cause
volcanoes
earthquakes, yeah.
and, tsunamis.
And tsunami, yeah. What you can do is, if you think of a musical instrument, like a violin or something, with one string, when you pluck that string or use a bow, you're sending waves down the string. And the waves, they are resonating inside the instrument. So what you've got is you've got a sound wave inside the instrument, which is either 1 wave, 2 waves, 4 waves, 6 waves, but you always have a complete wave in it. Now, when you increase the action of your bow or something, the wave can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what you can have is one wave now going on top of another wave. The easy way to understand this is one of the big bridges in London, Hammersmith Bridge. There's a notice on the bridge, forces must break step. In other words, if you're marching from the barracks from one side to the other, you can't, you've all got to not march. And the reason is, if you've got 100 men with their boots and they're going donk, 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 you get waves starting building up. The bridge is like a musical instrument. And then you will have a set number of waves, and then as you keep going donk, 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 the waves will then build up, called superposition. The waves will build up bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the vibration will be bigger and bigger and bigger on the bridge until the bridge collapses. So, and you can do that with these microwaves. You can send a wave, or to make an earthquake or whatever. You can send a wave through the planet. The wave can come back. You can send more and more and more waves. The planet will have its resonant frequency. Once you've got the resonant frequency, you can go stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and until you bring a mountain down or earthquake or something like that.
Yeah. What would be the whole point of causing a tsunami, besides the destruction? Why would they want to cause a tsunami? Most people would say they wouldn't do that, or a volcano or an earthquake.
Oh, let's take a theoretical argument, and people are arguing that this isn't too theoretical. Let's say I'm one country and I have the capability, as I am now, to rule the world. I have the most nuclear weapons, the most aeroplanes, the most everything, and I could take over the planet anytime I wanted to. If another country says, aha, but we are going to build a nuclear power station and we are going to make plutonium in our power station. Now, plutonium, unlike uranium, plutonium can only be enriched for one reason, which is an atomic bomb. It doesn't go anywhere other than atomic bombs. So if I am in this big country and I'm saying we will not allow you to make atomic bombs, we have got them, we will not allow you to come up to our strength. Do what you like in your country, but you're not coming up to threaten us. And if this country says, up yours, we're going to do what we like, what you can do, and scientifically it is possible, is you can cause an earthquake where that nuclear power station is, and you can have it shut down.
So that explains that. Yeah.
It can be done, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And HARP can do that. And if you've got two HARPs, there are 16. If you've got two where you have one sending one wave, another sending the same wave, and they go on top of each other, then these waves, as they're oscillating, because waves, that they go up and down, like, you know, more and more and more. As they're oscillating, they oscillate the ground. And in fact, during an earthquake, people don't realise this, but the earth that the buildings stand on, the earth becomes a liquid or a fluid. People don't realise that. In an earthquake, the ground vibrates and then vibrates faster and faster and faster, and it reaches the resonant frequency for the earth, and the earth acts like a fluid, and the buildings basically shrink down into the earth and fall over.
Wow. Wow. Do you feel they might have used directed energy weapons for the 9/11 buildings and Maui and all of these things where people could see these lasers coming down?
For 9/11? I mean, if you're asking me, could it be possible?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
If you're saying, did they? I don't know, because the site became a crime scene. Even the rubble is still a crime scene. No one is allowed to carry out experiments unless the government says, what's it for? What are you doing? We want the results first. And if they don't like it, you won't get permission to do it. But the whole area, all of the rubble is now as a crime scene.
Wow. Wow.
And you're not allowed to test it, not even to look at it.
Wow. Well, that's quite a telling sign in itself, isn't it? 22 years later, that they won't let.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. Microwaves are the perfect scientific weapon. You can't smell them, you can't see them, you can't touch them. Animals can with greater senses than us. Things that fly, things that crawl. Anything that flies, because the microwaves, if you could fly, the wing area of your body, like a butterfly, is a greater surface area than the actual body. That surface area picks up the microwaves. The microwaves resonate in the wings. That overpowers the Earth's natural magnetic field that they would normally use. So now they can't navigate. And this is why all the insects are getting lost and dying. Same as birds, everything is getting lost and dying. because the Earth's magnetic field is playing games with their brains.
And you were talking about the ant hills as well. You were saying that the ants were coming and they were licking these sticky leaves.
A king, I had dinner with a royal family, and the king, he took me to a field and he said, what do you hear, Barrie? Absolutely nothing, total silence. I mean, a lion or a gorilla over there somewhere. This is Africa, nothing. And he said, if we were standing here, normally we would be shouting to each other to be heard. He said, all of these bushes, and there are hundreds and thousands of bushes, he said, all of these bushes would be covered in ants. There would be birds, activity, everything going on. Birds would eat the berries, the ants would lick the syrup they get, and the birds discharge the berries when they don't want them through their abdominal system, and that grows a new plant and everything. But if a mosquito lands, or what's the animals that fly in their tens of thousands, like grasshoppers?
Crickets.
Crickets, yeah, those. If they land, grasshoppers and that, in their tens of millions, they can devastate an area like this in minutes. So the ants patrol the bushes pay the ants by providing syrup, and if a mosquito or a grasshopper or a cricket or anything that swarms lands on the bush, the ants swarm over it, they cut it to pieces, these are cutting ants, they cut it to pieces, take it down, feed off it. But since the ants have all got lost, he's lost his ants, and the bushes now have been devastated. And he said, for the first time in my country, I have scurvy.
Wow.
Scurvy is lack of vitamin C.
Yeah.
And he says, what I have to do now is I have to import fruit to my country, which is a big expense as far as we're concerned. And we are also starting to get rickets, which is a bending of the bones from lack of nutrient when you're pregnant. And he said, the very countries that are putting up the towers and we are addicted to, and they are taking our money away from us, they are the very countries that are coming in supplying us with the fruit and that. And the one thing they're asking for is mineral rights. So they're taking over my country. They have access to my mineral rights, access to whatever pieces of land they want to move in on. I have scurvy, I have rickets, I can't pay my health bills. He says I'm dependent now on the countries causing this for the viability of my country. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah. And you were talking about the Wi-Fi in schools and the damage it's doing to the children and the eggs and the ovaries. But then you said there's quite a simple solution. You drill a few holes and you put the wiring in, isn't it? Although that would...
There is I can give you the website of the paper. An 11-year-old girl came over here. We'll probably have to finish after this. An 11-year-old girl, unless there's anything short and sharp.
Yeah.
But I'll check it. 11-year-old girl came over from America to see me here. She had a lawyer with her and her father. And she said, Barrie, I want you to write me a research paper I want to be able to read it, and I'm 11 years old. Right, I'll do as I'm told. I want to know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. I want to know what it's doing to my ovaries, which are all there now with all of the eggs, all 400,000 of them. She says, I want to know what the risk is to my eggs, and I want Wi-Fi, if it is a risk, taken out of my classroom. Okay, so I wrote the paper, presented it to her. I had lunch with the Congress lady who backed her up in the school. A professor over there shared a platform with me. We gave a lecture to everybody about this, and she got away. At the moment, the father is still going to get all Wi-Fi taken out of all schools. He's still going, but I mean, she's married now with a kid, but she wrote a paper. If I give you the website,
Yeah, absolutely.
if you copy down this website here,
Sure, thanks, Barrie.
okay,
Yeah,
and ask her for, do you want a pen?
yeah, sure.
Ask
Just
her.
write that down, yeah? Just copy that.
Yeah, I need to keep that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Copy that down, Sylvia. Thank you. Yeah.
When you go through to her, when the bit that she reads have the word zygote, so she knows it's not spam. And then ask for the Wi-Fi paper. That's all. Oh no, ask for the Wi-Fi paper
Yeah,
and its update.
yeah, yeah,
Ask for the Wi-Fi paper and its update.
yeah.
You got that? Have you got that? Okay, yeah.
Just noted, yeah.
And subject, because somebody wanted to take me to court. The industry wanted to take me to court and wanted all of these papers around the world taken off the web. And I said to the lady who they terrified her, I said, send me a copy of what they said was wrong with the paper. So she sent me their paper. I wrote an update proving everything that they said was either untrue or a lie and was unbelievable. And that since writing the first report, this is the second one, the update, since writing the first one, everything I've said in terms of statistics is coming out true. And they dropped it.
That's amazing, because the truth always comes out in the
The
end.
truth will always come out.
Yeah.
It will always come out. I always say you can't keep killing people. You just can't go on.
Why do you do this? Why do you care? What would you like to be remembered for? Because you're going to be remembered for a very long time.
It's really unfortunate because as far as I know, I'm the only person in this country that spent 11 years talking to spies about this. I'm the only one I know in the military that is prepared to breach the Official Secrets Act. And I'm the only one that has the documents, because I kept the documents from the Cold War. So I'm the only one in this country that has got the proof of what I say. So as I look at it, I'm the only one in the country that can do what I'm doing. And my quest, which is very simple, when you look at the statistics around the world, and in fact it's worse than this now, and these are not mine, a captain in microwave warfare ministry in America and Canada, He's a captain in the microwave warfare military. He thought the same as me, and he wrote a book. Whereas I've got the papers, he wrote a book on it. And if you want his book, we've got our own beehive around there. If you leave, we'll be all right. He wrote a book, and but I'm the only one in the country, and he worked out through his mathematics and his publication, he published that before this bubble bursts and everything is rectified, there will be, if nothing is done, 2 billion women affected worldwide. So my quest is very simple. I can either be selfish and enjoy my retirement and watch television and do nothing, or I can try and save 2 billion women. And I think virtually everybody on the planet would say, well, it's down hard luck, but you happen to be the one that is doing this and you can't give up. And I can't give up. I wrote to the government and said, I'm breaking the Official Secrets Act. Why don't you take me to court? I would love my day in court and tell them what you're doing. I haven't heard back yet. That was about 25 years ago.
And you're protected by
yeah.
something higher.
So, but you see, I can go in and prove it. I have the documents to prove it. So
you're an amazing man.
And to me, I'm no different. My wife puts me in my place. I can tell you now when she says, "Haven't you done that bin yet?" or "This fraud is doing," or
brings you down to earth.
Yeah, my wife, she brings me down to earth. If I ever think I'm getting clever or smart, she'll bring me down to earth straight away. But I mean, to me, there is no such word as celebrity. There is no such thing as fame. We are all ordinary people. I happen to have a certain number of years' knowledge that is now in vogue because people want it. And that's it. But my aim now is to save 2 billion women, and you might find Jonathan with his photography might come across something. It's not, you don't plan for it. Jonathan might come across something filming and say, hang on, there's something wrong there. I can make another film and prove that this shouldn't be going on. And before Jonathan knows where he is, he's got governments and people say, did you do that festival, the festival on, well, the big film festival, Cannes, one of my films was on there. They say, Jonathan, did you make that film for the Cannes Film Festival, the documentary? Yeah. Well, can we use you? And before you know it, once you say yes, there is no saying no. There is no saying no. You just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honour, Mr.
Well, it's my
Barrie.
pleasure.
Thank you so much.